Our next speaker is a freelance developer and visual craftsman hailing from Portland, Oregon. His work bridges software, firmware, and graphics, which is blended together with the world of human emotion and responses. In 2012, he discovered hardware for the first time and has since become deeply involved in a number of large-scale LED installations. So please welcome to the stage here, Zach Archer.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. I am Zach. I'm here to talk about this enormous 40-foot sign that was installed at a hacker camp out earlier this year, and I ended up writing a whole live coding framework for it, and I'm going to explain how this all came together and why. This is a little background about me. I am an interactive developer, so I do a lot of work with touch screens, apps. This is a really exciting job. You get to work with animation, color, motion design, and sensors, and all kinds of things. Toorcamp is a North American hacker camp out. It happens every 2 years in Washington State. Toorcamp blew my little mind when I went there in 2012, and I was exposed to the world of hardware for the first time, and I found this amazing community of creative people doing interesting things with hardware, and I didn't know how badly I needed that, but it was so good for me, and it's led to all kinds of interesting projects and work now. Toorcamp does have adverse environmental conditions because you are outside and you're exposed to the weather. You're probably sleeping in a tent. I like this picture. This is a payphone setup, but you can see there's actually a deer back here wandering the picnic tables, scrounging for food. That's a typical, Toorcamp scene. I bought my first LED strips at Toorcamp 2012, and I started using them in projects, and it's turned into this really interesting kind of hobby, kind of craft of making custom lighting. The one on the right I did a talk about earlier in this year, that's a 3D printed enclosure, and the LED strips inside are arranged in wavy patterns. It turned out really well. And what I like about working with hardware is that everything can be customized. You're not limited to off-the-shelf components. You don't have to buy someone else's monitor or screen. You can make your own device completely from scratch. So, your own display, you can put any sensors that you want inside of it to give it as much aliveness as you want. This is a project that I did in 2013. I worked on this. I did mostly software on this one, so the graphics and motion and programming. This was back when I was still pretty new to hardware. I didn't understand a lot of how this was put together, but I threw this in here. It's a permanent installation at a technical bookstore in Seattle. It's a really amazing place. It's Ada's Technical Books, and I threw this in there because the same people who who organize Toorcamp, there is overlap with the people who run and operate Ada's. So a few years pass, and I'm looking for work, and I reached out to the Toorcamp crew, and they had a request. There was these other camps had these amazing giant illuminated signs, and Toorcamp wanted something of their own. They wanted something custom that would be really memorable and really exciting, and they said, can you do that? So we floated some concepts around. The most obvious thing you can do is take LEDs or lights and then put a diffuser in front of them, and that's fine. That it looks really good. We also talked about maybe doing cove lighting. This was actually my idea. This is something that I've wanted to try for a while. I like it because you can make weird shapes. I like the indirect light effects. I thought this might be too expensive and too time consuming, especially if we're cutting out like weird curves and weird shapes. So we ended up shooting that one down. What we ended up going with was this vintage style sign, which are these, you've seen these around at like, coffee houses and everything, right? It's a cutout letter, it's recessed, and then you put bulbs inside of it to illuminate the interior. It looks really good, and we ended up going with that. So we had figured out our plan. The basic design. I estimated the materials and how much that would cost, and I did a time estimate just to make sure that I could actually, ship this in time for Toorcamp, right? And I thought, okay, it's going to be tight, but it is possible. And then the tour crew approved of it, and we're ready to go. There is one issue with this whole plan because I got approval on Monday, June 4th of this year. Toorcamp starts on Thursday, June 21st. So you have 3 weeks. You don't even have 3 weeks. This is what? That's 17 days, right? So it's a pretty tight timeline. So I'm going to talk about what I did to make this happen. We did some design mock-ups. I actually used this a web tool called FontStruct. It's really fun. It lets you draw your own fonts using geometric primitives, and you can see some ideas that we floated around here. We settled on something close to the bottom one here. You can see like the little points where the lights are going to go inside these letters. I like this. There's not. It's not too difficult to build these. It's not too many cuts, right? It's a pretty simple shape, and I thought, okay, this is probably doable. And then you have to decide which lights. And as you know, LEDs are amazing. There's a huge variety of LED products out there, and there's a new crop of amazing LEDs every 6 months. It's so much fun. And I made a list of requirements that I wanted. They have to be on a strand, right? Because we're making a vintage style sign. There's going to be like bulbs on a strand. They must be individually addressable because that's awesome, right? You want to be able to light them up individually different colors so you can do animation and it'll just look amazing. Must be full color. They must be RGB. They must be weather resistant. This goes back to the adverse conditions at Toorcamp. This is going to be outdoors and probably pummeled with rain and who knows what else. And this one must be directly viewable. I wanted to find something that had a diffuser on it. I didn't want people to be staring at exposed, uncovered LEDs. I know maybe this is like, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of rude to do that with that much power and that much light. You want people to be able to watch it for a while and not go blind and not burn out, their eyes, right? So after doing some digging, we found these, and these are available from a bunch of different suppliers. These are 12-volt devices. These are basically NeoPixels. I found one page that said, can achieve IP68. So I thought, okay, that's probably good enough, right? And these had the frosted domes on them, and it covers up 3 individual RGB LED units inside. So, plenty of light, right? 3 weeks means you should use what you know. So this wasn't going to be overly ambitious. This wasn't going to be building tons of technical skills, probably inside of 3 weeks. And I ended up using Teensy 3.2s. These are fine. There are plenty of ways to eliminate LEDs. I have used Teensy's in the past for a bunch of other projects that turned out really well. And the Adafruit Perma Proto boards, the universe keeps on giving me chances to learn KiCad, KiCad, and do my own circuit design, and I keep on resisting for some reason. I really do need to learn, pretty soon. But I thought, okay, I've used Perma Proto boards before. I have 3 weeks. This is probably good enough, right? Here's a big list of things I did not know. I'm not going to cover these individually. I was really lucky that I was in a position to step away from, put my life on pause for 2.5 weeks and just dive into all the technical issues that I needed to learn in order to make this happen. The communication alone was really interesting. You have to send your lighting information across, this giant sign. We didn't know exactly how big it was going to be. That by itself was a huge issue. Here's the microcontroller, Teensy 3.2 with the breakout boards for driving 8 strands of LEDs in parallel. We ended up driving at most, I think, 3 on this project, but that's fine. Here's the networking, sending data using RS-485 over long distances on Cat 5e cables and using RJ45 connectors, which you probably know from, because they're used in Ethernet. And the boards look like this. I made 8 of these. I love them, even though the RJ45 jacks are sort of sticking off the board on these like blue and yellow stalks here. It's a little derpy. I was kind of expecting people to laugh at me when they saw this and say, "Get lost from Toorcamp, noob," but no one did. People are really, what I like about the creative hardware scene is that people don't really patronize each other. That's been my experience anyway. They don't expect you to do something their way. And I think given the timeline and the my skills, right, or lack thereof, and the resources, and 3 weeks, this is pretty good. This is fine. I made 8 of those, and everything seemed to work in a controlled environment. This is what my office looks like. Yeah, I got everything plugged in. The boards were talking to each other, and it was ready to go. So here we are at Toorcamp, and we're going to build some giant letters. This guy is amazing. He is on the Toorcamp staff. He is the construction master for all of their projects. He was a lot of fun to work with. He taught me a bunch of things about woodworking that I'm still using now. He also told a bunch of jokes while we were working and kind of didn't stop, which at the time was a little, kind of aggravating. But in retrospect, he really helped to keep the mood light. And I think that was really valuable, especially because his attention was being pulled off onto all these other projects, so he couldn't even give 100% of his attention onto this project. And we were kind of managing. We really felt like we were under pressure, right? And a whole lot of people showed up and helped. I just wanted to throw this out there. If you're interested in coming to an event like Toorcamp, but you're nervous because you're going to be sleeping on the dirt and there's going to be noise and you're worried about food, one thing that you can do is sign up to be a volunteer, and they will put you to work. They'll find things for you to do. But that's fine because they will feed you, they will potentially house you, and you'll get to hang out and bond with just amazing, driven people who are just doing amazing things. I would recommend this to anyone. Absolutely. Here are some stands. Bill drafted these in his head, and while we were building the letters, and then everything came together perfectly. That guy's amazing. The yellow dot right here is a tennis ball impaled on a piece of rebar, which is holding that stand. It's pinning it into the ground so that should any drunken revelers go back here and bump it with their legs, then it won't, slice your skin open. And we made this amazing human scale signage. It was huge. It was really exciting to watch this come together. I'm pretty tall for a human. I'm about 6 feet 5 inches. So this sign was about 40 feet long, 8 feet tall. Could potentially max out at 505 watts if I calculated that correctly. Hopefully we did not draw that. And of course, the weather. This is how we solved the weather issues. You get Tupperware containers from your local store, you shove the guts of your electronics in there, and you seal it with a Tupperware lid, and then you hope that the water doesn't get inside. This actually worked really well. I was really surprised by this. When you screw it to the post, that makes a watertight seal if you do it properly. So, wow, who knew? Project management. Lots of people came up to me and they asked what they could do to help, and they wanted me. I realized that I don't really have experience in this area. I didn't know how to delegate tasks or act like I was in this leadership position because I didn't really feel like it. So that's something that I can look at later. There was a lot of work involved. A lot of people helped, and there was always more to do. So we need to talk about state management, and this is basically your stress level and your mental health and moments when you think, my God, what have I got myself into? Doesn't this look like fun here? Whatever's going on here. Oh man, this was a pretty stressful project. This was cramming a lot of knowledge in my head in a very short amount of time, and then going on site for some pretty hard physical labor to craft this crazy thing. And if you're not, you need to have ways of dealing with this stress, and sometimes other people can help. Sometimes it has to come from inside. You have to practice, things like, I don't know, meditation works for me, stepping away can work too. I want to share, I think, what was my lowest point on this project, and that was when we got the letters built, we had the LEDs screwed down, we had just put them all on the stands, and we're ready to do the wiring and switch them on, right? So we connected all the wires to the first letter, which was the T, and plugged it in, and nothing happened, no lights. And my heart started beating a little faster, and I thought, okay, well, maybe there's just a cold solder joint. Maybe this is just a fluke. Let's move on to the O. And we did the wiring and plugged it in, and there's still no lights. And I remember this moment because I was down on I was doing this basically, right? And I had Bill over here and my good longtime friend Garrett over here, and probably one or two other high-ranking members of Toorcamp staff watching me, and they're all watching me. And I am panicking because all these crazy thoughts are going through my head. Oh my God, I'm out of my league. I just wasted everybody's time. This was a huge waste of money. We're all stressed out. It's all my fault. Can you spot the error? I have this, I like this idea that if you're embarking on a heroic quest with several people, if one person can stay calm, at every point, then you will be okay. You will emerge victorious. It doesn't always have to be the same person. Someone can be calm 1 minute and then crazy in the next minute, right? But you need to have people who can think clearly when other people's emotions are clouded because they're stressed out. When this was going down, Garrett took the voltmeter and touched it to the power supply on the T, cool as a cucumber. And he says, that's weird. We're not getting 12 volts. We're getting more like 7 volts. And a few seconds later, I realized what had happened. It was this switch right here, the region selector switch that you change depending on your country. We had it switched for the wrong input voltage. I had remembered to do that in the controlled environment, but in the chaos of the installation, this had, it hadn't happened. We hadn't done it. So we flipped the switches, we plugged everything back in, and oh my God, we have lights. It was a huge, huge moment, especially as the sun went down, and it looked really, really good. And there's a lot of people's footage of the first 2 nights. We made these kind of temporary animations for them, so each letter here is doing something different. And I set it up in a kind of appliance mode, which means that when you plug it in for the first time, it doesn't just sit there doing nothing. It actually starts up like a default animation, like it does something, right? And yeah, that's always a good idea. But we're not done. Installations are they can be pretty crazy. You don't know what you're walking into when you do an installation, and I get to do a bunch of these, with my day job, with my installing interactives, right? You've probably heard some version of Parkinson's law, which is that however much time you have for your project, your work is going to expand out to completely fill that time. It doesn't matter how much time it is, right? And as a consequence of that, a lot of really critical things have to come first, like the power supply issues, the wiring, circuit design, fabrication, before you can do the kind of human and the experiential element, like the graphics, right? And that's kind of sad. I feel like I've had a few projects where the graphics, where the kind of like front end and the experience gets squeezed out until at the very end. So I figured this was probably going to happen, and I thought maybe there's something that I can do about this. Like maybe there's a way to handle this better. So I thought maybe we could try using a live coding framework, and this means that we can alter the behavior of the code at runtime. I don't have to spend a ton of time crafting custom animations and debugging and compiling and flashing all the devices. And I did these cute little sketches here. Here's a typical program, right? So you write your code on your laptop, right? And here's this is a really great program because we're setting A to 5, and then there's some math, and then we're doing something with RGB here, right? So it compiles it, and it flashes your microcontroller, and then your microcontroller is basically stuck doing that one thing. Like you've boxed in its behavior, and it cannot do anything else. And that's fine if it's exactly what you want. But I wanted something that that was more flexible and that we could change dynamically. So live coding, altering the behavior in real time. Here's that sketch with a couple tweaks. So the firmware that we write, it doesn't do anything specific. It's not doing any specific math. It's not doing any a specific color. What it's doing is it's set up to execute generic instructions. It's basically a computer running inside a little computer, inside your microcontroller. And when you want to change what it does, you send it a network message, hi, here's instruction 0, right? Do this sum. Here's instruction 1. Do some RGB stuff, and that message is sent out on the network. The microcontroller receives it, and then it just starts immediately executing those commands, and the results are pushed out to the LEDs, right? And this is immensely powerful because you can change how your animation looks in like at runtime, basically. And I know this is probably crazy, but I did bring a live coding demo, so I'm hoping we can. Yeah. Uh-oh. Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm going to be typing, so yeah. Oh, great. Thanks. Yeah. So hopefully this will work. In a controlled environment, this did work. So let's see what we got. So I have a webcam here, and I'm going to activate that. Oh, good. Okay. So here's the webcam. Yay! Say hi, everybody. Okay, and this is pointing at this really great LED board that I made years ago. This is what the board looks like. It has enough wires to build a pinball machine out of. It's really great, right? And this is a diffuser sheet. It's actually a FedEx envelope. This was put together pretty quickly, by the way. Sorry, not sorry. And so this is my web tool for doing the live coding, and I wrote my own custom programming language. It's a pretty silly language. The syntax is similar to C or JavaScript. There wasn't a formal spec for this. I just kind of made it up as I went. But you can see, it's really easy to change what the LEDs are doing. So here's our RGB function. If we set the red to some value, then it immediately takes effect, right? And there's a whole bunch of special values here that you can use. There is a coordinate system, so we can change the red to capital X, and it's hard to see with the camera, sorry, but there is a gradient going on there, and you can see that on the side where X is 0, the lights are turned off, and then where X is 1, the lights are fully bright, right? They're bright red. Yeah. And really quickly, it was really easy to add features that I use a lot. In graphics programming, you end up using a lot of the same constructs over and over. You use trigonometry and sine waves and things, so it's really easy to just bang out really cool animations in practically no time. So suppose we want to make waves emerging from the center. So there is this special letter R, which, wow, it's actually pretty hard to see. What if I, yeah, take this off? Okay.
No, that doesn't work at all.
That doesn't work at all? Actually, what if I do this? Can you guys see this? Is that better? Okay, yeah. Perfect. Oh, great. I was concerned that it would be too small. Like originally, I wanted to bring something really large, like one of the Toorcamp letters, and then I realized there's no way that it's going to fit on the plane. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. Except now I can't see. All right. So you have to tell me what's showing up here, right? Okay. So. Take the radius, we're gonna multiply that by 5, so it should be brighter, right, with kind of a dark spot in the center. Okay, and then I have a special version of the sine function, which returns a value normalized between 0 and 1 instead of -1 to 1, and then the period of the wave goes from 0 to 1 instead of from 0 to 2 pi, and I feel like I would probably, if I was programming in like any other language, I would probably put those coefficients in anyway. And that's sine 0, 1. So we're going to take the wave of this, and it should be kind of a target shape, right? Okay, great. And there's one more special letter. I'm going to put in some extra parentheses because there is a operator precedence bug that I haven't got around to fixing yet. And we're going to add capital T for time, and it should be moving now. Oh. There. Is that it? Oh, perfect. Right. Great. Wonderful. Yeah. It's really fast, you guys. My made-up language, it does have a variable assignment, so we're going to do this. We're going to put that in a variable, and instead of RGB, we're going to use HSV, and I'm going to, let me see, we're going to start with red. We're going to set the value to the brightness. So this, yeah, that's almost the same. We need to turn up the saturation, right? And there's this other magic variable that you can use, which is capital A, which is the angle around the center, and we can just go ahead and throw time in there, and you've made an animation. So that took about, what, a minute? It's really exciting. Thank you. It was really exciting when I got this working, because you can, any idea that you have, you can bang it out in seconds instead of minutes or hours, and you don't have to spend lots of flash cycles getting the timing perfectly, finessing all your variables. It's so easy. Really quickly, I have a couple presets just to show some other things that are going on here. This might be upside down. Actually, it's fire going upside down because the board is upside down. But yeah, this framework, it does have a three-dimensional noise texture in it, which is actually really useful. You can have kind of like static and noise in your signal, and then and it does have some persistent state per pixel. I'm probably going to have to hit the reset button here, but oh no, it's working. Yeah, and the obligatory matrix animation, right? So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to mess around with this. You can waste a lot of time with this. It's really, really great. I don't know. It's not looking bad. Oh, well, I have more slides. I mean, just a few. I'm going to turn this off here. Okay. Okay. Yeah, thanks. How it feels to live code? Oh, it's the best. I got the network issues debugged about 5 minutes before the closing ceremony, unfortunately, true story. And then on Saturday night, we did a live coding session where it's me sitting in a chair on the left there and messing around with animations. And it is a really incredible feeling to program something this massive, and it just does whatever you type out immediately. It's amazing, and it was so much fun. It kind of felt like I was going, I was about to do a performance when I started. I was actually kind of nervous. I kind of felt like I don't know what I'm doing. It is kind of this, presentation, but people got really excited by it. And I think this is just the beginning of live coding for me. I have a whole bunch of other LED projects. This is an arcade game lamp that I'm building with this cool edge lighting, but this is all a live coding algorithms here, and it's just messing around. Each of these took a minute or two. This is not a great video, but it's a really great tool. You don't have to write custom code for every animation that you want, and then like maintain each function separately. Basically, you can just like bang them out in your live coding framework and just copy and paste that in. One lesson that I learned was be willing to adapt. Your project will probably not unfold like you planned. One thing that happened was that we had a plan for 3 strands of LEDs inside each letter, and then on the final version, you can see the middle strand is actually missing. Once we started screwing down LEDs, we quickly realized that this is going to take too much time. We're going to be here forever. So we huddled, and we decided it's still going to look really good if we remove the inner strands, and that is what we did. It actually gave it a really great style, and it turned out really well. There were also plans to have some interactivity. We were going to use ultrasonic distance sensors. We did not finish that in time, but at Toorcamp 2020, we might revisit this, and it would be really great to put that in. You could walk up to the sign, and then it would react to you. Full circle Toorcamp. In 2012, when I went to Toorcamp for the first time, I was this wide-eyed, eager kid, and I would get in everyone's way and ask them what they were doing, and probably bug the crap out of them. And it was kind of funny to be on the other end of that this time. I kind of feel like I've come a full circle. Like I was doing a project that people were interested in. They were coming up to me, and this. I don't feel like a different person. I don't feel like anything, like I haven't changed that much. In the background of this slide, you can see the beautiful scenery of Toorcamp, which I kind of didn't have time to enjoy at this time. A lot of people who brought ambitious projects, they ended up being pretty stressed out, and they didn't get to really relax and unwind in the environment. So if you have something ambitious planned, just keep that in mind. I added this picture because I like it. My friend joked this was the first time that I smiled all camp. This is us, taking in, our a successful sign. And a quick shout out to my photographer and friend Garrett, who traveled with me, shot all of the good photos in this talk. He has a photo stream on Flickr. He took so many photos. It was such an asset. He really captured kind of like what it felt like to be there. So I definitely recommend checking that out. And that is where I'm at. If you are interested in graphics, if you're doing things with graphics, please get in touch with me. And thank you very much.
We can clean that off. We got a break.